All right. Well, it's great to be here with you, good brother.
Great to be with you too, man.
Yeah, man. It was, I think, an amazing opportunity to remind ourselves of the unbroken lineage of state violence, right? That has been unleashed upon so many Black folk who dared to step up and critique, but also organize to dismantle white supremacy, fascism. I mean, and what's really, I think, interesting about this film is it is really concretizing the real structured state violence that was being unleashed upon these young people. And that's what they were. They were teenagers, right? They weren't like these old heads. And I think that's one of the things that's consistent about the movement across the years. It's a lot of young people standing up to state-sponsored violence and saying, we're not going to bend our knees or bow our head.
It's the consistent antagonizing of Black bodies and Black spirits and Black life, and the dehumanization of Black life, which I feel is the true disease, and it's how the antagonization is used to empower and poor white people to feel that their whiteness is something of value above someone else's. And how loving Black people, you are seen as radical. Taking care of Black people, you're seen as radical. You're seen as a problem. And there's a consistent perspective of how events are seen, and how the narrative is subtly. I think it's more subtle in this day and age. I believe that's what has changed, because I believe how they thread and suggest and manipulate the minds of the masses is more covert nowadays. I think Shaka just said it right now about calling the protesters, they would call them armed protesters. It's just a subtle kind of like they're not radical. The dehumanization of the other side. Before they would just call the Black Panther Party terrorists. They'd be very naked with their intention. So I believe you have to be more aware and more awake in order to see what's really happening.
Yeah, I have found this idea that criminalization of protest by Black and brown folks, or at least folks who are not attempting to maintain the status quo, is met with a kind of violence and lethality that the kind of dissent expressed by white folks who are pushing back against the liberation struggles is met with a lot of appeasement, right? It's like we understand that kind of anxiety, whether it's racialized, whether it's grounded in class, whether it's grounded in gender. We understand that kind of anxiety as it bubbles up. But if it's bubbling up in a different kind of place, I think it's such a challenge. That's why I think the genius of Fred Hampton was his ability to help groups who are experiencing similar oppression or repression to understand that solidarity was the way to defeat the state, not the fragmentation. And I wonder, for me, that's part of the legacy of Fred Hampton. I'm curious, as you brought him so powerfully to the screen, what kind of legacy stood out for you as we remember him and the contributions he's made to our freedom struggles over the years?
Yeah, just to support what you said, I feel like it's when I was doing a deep dive into Chairman Fred and I saw about the Rainbow Coalition. I was like, wow, like which 21-year-old thinks that way?
Right.
In the late 60s. And I can see why that line of thinking has almost been eradicated from mainstream thought and discourse, and it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of bringing that back, you know, and showing the truth, showing that loving your own and loving yourself is the most radical act in the face of fear. Is I feel it's fear dressed as hate. Is how I feel about what's happening, what has happened continuously. If you go back to the genesis of colonization, is the reason why they colonized is because they were without. You know, they had a lack, and Africa had an abundance, and they went from A to B because of that. You know, and that is a dynamic that continues. You know, and if you have a lot of love in you and a lot of love for your own in the face of all the fear dressed as hate, and you can pull off and do things that are almost unheard of, you know?
Right.
And that's what Chairman Fred and the Black Panthers of the Illinois chapter proved with their deeds, you know?
Right.
With the Breakfast Club, you know, with the education, with the medical clinic, with all these incredible things they taught us and continue to teach us how to love ourselves and for ourselves in order to treat ourselves.
Right.
And I think that's, with me, is the most profound idea and belief that is running through them. That it's about having the tools so that you are standing tall enough to free yourself.
Yeah.
And
yes, it's like you said, like self-love is a revolutionary and liberated act.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because you're unable to be controlled.
Yes, sir.
What did someone said the other day? If you're easily offended, you're easily manipulated.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
You're unable to be moved. You move yourself. You move your people you love. And that's what Chairman Fred Hampton did. You know.
Yeah.
That's what
that deep love for himself and those whom he loved, right, was so abundant that the overflow of that love inspired others to mimic that kind of love, even to the point of like vulnerability and risk. You know, it wasn't. You know, I mean, I think that was one of the dopest parts of the movie in my mind. Is you just saw how with the brothers across town that they were beefing with, eventually they were so compelled by his commitment to love himself and his community. Then he went there in the Appalachians and the deep love he had for his own folks, but then the ability to allow that love to overflow into a place of solidarity, like that kind of love attracts people to one another. Like, so self-love doesn't have to be a repellent.
No.
It can actually attract like minds and like hearts into solidarity.
Yeah, I read something the other day or heard something the other day. It's like it's not selfishness, it's self-fullness. And how the love that they poured within themselves and there was that capacity to the point where it overflowed is the reason why we're sitting here in 2021 speaking about it. That's how much. That's how much it overflowed. I mean, he's like in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
We're still talking.
Like, get out your buckets. Let's get some more of this love.
Yeah, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like we're building films. It's empowering people. Like, it's like we're in the city of Cleveland. There's people that have been on the film set before because of the love that they had for themselves and their own. And that for me is I just find that profound. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's the essence. It's the essence, and you can see why they wanted him out.
Yeah.
I mean, they took his ideas and they ran with it and they eradicated him from the credit, with them the feeding the breakfast program. That they're now having nationally within America. It's his legacy is, was it ubiquitous?
Yeah.
And however, we I think because of his name has been suppressed by the powers that be. Now is the time to give. It's not even a giving. It's for him to be who he is,
Mm-hmm.
And to be out there as himself, so people can see these ideas and go, oh, the root of this is this,
Mm-hmm.
and this, and this era, and this time, and these people, as opposed to believing that these people are there to are terrorists, they're to harm. they're dangerous because they're there to love,
Mm-hmm.
But it's, we are so out of sync of what love looks like, and what love feels like, that we don't process it as that, and so that's, for me, is when I was really in it and really sitting in it, and understanding. Like, I learned about him, but he taught me so much, about myself. During that process, 50 years when we shot it, 52, coming up to 52, after he was murdered. So it's profound, his legacy, and
we stand on that. We stand on the shoulders of that. I mean, one of the things that I appreciate about this generation of activists, revolutionaries, protesters, whatever word you want, I like freedom fighters, is that we're not ahistorical in how we live out this work. It's a baton that's been passed on to us, and unfortunately, sometimes these batons are drenched in blood. They're drenched in the pain and the trauma and the loss and the grief of those that have come before us. There are comrades of Chairman Fred and others in the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense across the country that are still incarcerated, known as political prisoners. And so one legacy, I hope, is that we don't forget those who struggle alongside, and they're left to languish away in jails and prisons, because they paid such a price with their life that we're still, I think, trying to make worthy of the way in which we love and lead and serve and bring about transformation in our society.
Yeah, and I hope that this moment allows to kind of build upon what you were saying, to allow the people that are incarcerated at this current moment for activism, for them to be, their cases to be relooked, and then to be freed, to be compensated for the time lost, and to be, and have their narratives retold, because it's that they've been robbed of life, and it's and I really want that for. I think this is what this moment is about as well, to really, for people to, all these activists that were vilified and criminalized and antagonized, to be transformed, actually, in terms of their perception in the psyche, and then real change can happen, and real, like, we're really rewriting what it means to take care of your own, and what that and actually I believe the disease of, I believe Black people have the symptoms, but they don't have the disease. The disease of this goes to where it is. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In the insecurities and the fears of white people in society that carry those beliefs, and believe that they are superior. It doesn't even makes sense, you know? Does it even make sense to me?
100%.
Just to realign to basically to the truth of this. And I think there's so many lies that we prescribe to that are just commonplace. And then there's people in prison that are suffering because of those lies. And I know I'm happy when it does happen, you know, that these people can be freed and then they can get their lives back, and their legacy alongside Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Hampton's legacy, can be honored and placed in the position that it's supposed to.
Well, I'll say, brother, you did your part to make it come out on this screen in this story, and so I appreciate the opportunity to do our part as organizers and activists to bring these stories alive and keep the fire burning. So bless you, my friend. It's great to rock with you in this conversation, and yeah, man, it's great work, good work y'all done.
Appreciate that. We're just vessels. Bro.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Bro.
All right now.
Bless you.
Stay strong.
You too, bro.